what a treat to have Johannesburg's Tashmia Ismail Seville joining us again and moderating this session with you, Jay Levin. And, you know, they're both doing great things in the world. Tash came on and did a session for us. She created a mask initiative in Johannesburg, which created over 1,000, or sorry, pardon me, bite my tongue, over 100,000 masks and a gig economy and probably saved many, many lives. So good on you, Tash. What a fantastic initiative that, you know, that you put together for Yes South Africa. And Jay Levin, Jay is here promoting the importance of social emotional learning. So first of all, how are you both?
All good here in Joburg.
Fantastic. Jay, how are you?
All good, crazy busy here.
Fabulous. So I'm gonna dive right into these questions. This format is called 20 Questions with Jay Levin, and I'm not going to read your bios. You're both pretty accomplished individuals, and I'm honored to have you on my podcast. Jay, what was the impetus for LA Weekly? What got you into the media business?
What got me into media business was that I had children when I was 20 years old, and I didn't have a chance to go be a novelist, so I decided on being a journalist.
It sounds like a default position, and it worked out pretty well for you, right?
It was where I was meant to be, for sure. I got guided right into something that was pretty spectacular. Yeah.
Fabulous. And you've been quoted as saying that, so you have an interest in media properties that have what you call social value. What does that mean exactly?
Social value means they're looking for where the world could use some positive change, and they're supporting that positive change on every level, both socially, politically, and internally, in people's skills to deal with the world in a healthy way.
So, Jay, I have this really boring master's in business, and we see that you've got a master's in spiritual psychology, which just sounds fascinating. I'd love to, if you could tell us a little more about that and how that helps you as a life coach.
Okay, so the spiritual psychology it comes from the idea that basically we have two selves. We have a traumatized, pre-programmed self that in hierarchical cultures creates a judgmental mind and a bunch of coping mechanisms that don't really allow us to deal with our inner lives and our emotional lives. The Human Development Movement has produced post-Freudian a great deal of practices that allow us to relearn how to be in the world with ourselves in a healthy way. Spiritual side of it says, once you relearn it, you're going to find out who you really are. And you're an expression of the divine. You have divine capacities. You have infinite wisdom, psychic abilities, loving qualities. And when you learn to get out of your own way, that's automatically. So healing is just learning how to get the old programming out of the way, and what will emerge is who God created you as. So that's your real high self.
And how does this work in your life coaching space? How do you apply this?
Oh, yeah. So it works in a life coaching space as it works with any counseling or coaching, is you're teaching people the skills developed by the Human Development Movement, post-Freudian therapists, to manage their emotions, the negative emotions, to open themselves to broader vision, to learn how to communicate in a healthy way, nonviolent communication way with others, to learn good decision-making skills, to learn how to trust what is their intuition or their higher knowingness, to get out of the critical mind that judges yourself and judges others, and basically to be able to function in the world from a very different place. And it's a skills training. Our motto is that all human dysfunctionality, 98% of human pain and what we cause each other, et cetera, ourselves and others, and the stuff we know of as life really comes from a lack of skills to deal with. And we're seriously maltrained in hierarchical culture child development and the cultural matrix of judgment, and gets you thinking, am I one up or one down in any situation? So coaching is just teaching people, whether it's couples or individuals, the skills, the practical skills to end those practices, those bad habits as they are, and come into a different way of being in the world, much healthier.
I think I'm going to book a transatlantic coaching session with you after this.
Okay, happy. No charge.
We see that you're running something called the Big EQ campaign,
Right.
and the California Social Emotional Learning Alliance. Maybe you could expand on that and tell us what that's about.
Okay, well, it's exactly about what I just expressed. It's about there's an education movement called social and emotional learning. It's been around for 40 years. It's been called that for 30 years. It is these practices and techniques and skill sets brought to children, levels of children, for every age group differently, different practices, different games, etc. So when you put them in the schools, or you get, especially if you can get them in the homes and schools, but when you get them in the schools, you're going to keep the kids out of the matrix or transform them when they're young enough, so they don't have those terrible bad habits and judgment of themselves. So they learn to manage their negative emotions, their behaviors. They learn to be how to be collaborative with other kids. They learn how to resolve conflicts, make good decisions, have self-esteem and confidence rather than fear of other people, be mutually supportive, and you get beautiful results on every level. All the garbage stuff that happens, the bad behaviors, the acting out, the clicking up, the violence, the bullying, drug usage, suicides, even screen addictions dissipate, and you get these remarkable kids doing great work in the world, project-driven stuff, great change makers for the world, who learn on a much higher level when you can do that comprehensively in school. So both those organizations are meant to help the education movement get this in all schools here in the United States and then ideally in the world. And one is bringing the program providers and the educators and the community equity organizations together, so they, in an alliance on a statewide level, to do the lobbying and the grassroots education to make this happen, be an influence in their states. And the larger one, now called Equip Our Kids campaign, is about filling the huge gap. The most important gap is that nobody knows about these programs and practices and how effective they are. So we're doing the advertising and media, testing the messages. You can't sell social emotional learning. You can sell emotional intelligence and what it means, the ability to manage yourself, your relationships, and your life in a happy, productive, and caring way. Very simple definition. It's just a skills, it's ability to, and that can be learned, and that therefore happiness can be learned. So that's the message we carry out there, and we're doing a lot of that message carrying, and we're out there also helping the movement, the movement grow themselves so they can get business support, we can get messaging support, and they can perfect their messages to the public. Okay, that's what we do.
My country could absolutely use this type of curriculum in our communities.
I have lots
just
of
riddled with
friends.
violence and
I've been there. I have lots of stuff. You absolutely could use it.
Do you know? So too could Canada, Jay. Absolutely.
Every country in the world could use it. The human species is on the verge of blowing itself up from its own madness, its own ability to say our tribe is better than yours. We got to arm up against you. So we have nukes pointed at our heads that could go off accidentally anytime, and we're committing ecocide out of that. I have to have more than you, and I can get that out of oil, and we're not going to have collective collapse. You're not going to have the power to make collaborative decisions about doing it better, differently and wiser. So, you know, we're on the precipice, and there's a race to get these skill sets and different mindsets together so that the next generation can fix these very, very dire issues that we've created, a lifestyle we created for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. So Joe, you've had this incredible career, and at one point you were running major media outlets, LA Weekly.
Uh-huh.
What did you learn about human nature in that role?
What I learned, that, you know, most people come from their child development, when they're stressed out, come from their child development coping mechanisms, and including me. And, you know, we all need a different level of awareness and training, and every business should take it in. I've also learned the power of media, and what the transformational power of media when you win the public respect and they trust you, and the ability of journalism to make really profound changes. We got the air cleaned up in Los Angeles, and with that in a lot of most other LA city,
Yeah.
California cities, just by the journalism we did about the corruption in air quality management districts. That's just one example. We had a lot of positive changes into our community. And we raised the consciousness by how we covered arts people. So we validated the inner higher zeitgeist of people, and so they flocked to the paper.
So media is an incredibly powerful tool in spreading these messages, and it'd be great to turn them to spread more of the good messages than some of the fake news we get out of media these days.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. So we hear this word. I mean, we talk about this big EQ campaign, and we keep reading about the word emotional intelligence. Business schools are also bandying it about. Maybe you could give us your definition and understanding of what emotional intelligence is.
Okay, so as I said before, emotional intelligence is the skill set or the ability to manage your feelings and your behaviors and your relationships with others and your career and your life in a healthy, in a caring, productive, and happy-making way. And
Okay, that's a great definition. My wife, just to chime in, aside from my wife telling me quite often that I don't have enough emotional intelligence, which is probably true, because this is a lifelong journey, right? It really and truly is. But you know, hearing you talk about emotional intelligence, Natasha's questions are a nice segue into the question that a lot of what I'll call overbearing parents are asking, or asking themselves maybe.
Right.
And we hear a lot about STEM, right? Science, technology, English, math, STEM programs. Are we overly obsessed with this? And I'll ask this in a different way. What's more important for kids? IQ, or what Chip Conley, I had him on recently, calls digital quotient, or emotional quotient, and why?
Well, emotional quotient, because it's about managing life, not managing some outside force like 2 and 2 is 4, and how to get a rocket ship up there. You know, if you don't have a decent amount of emotional intelligence, your life is going to suffer a lot. And if you don't, and the collective lack of emotional intelligence means we're looking at, you know, a COVID crisis in the United States, race wars, etc. So, you know, collective intelligence means you're available for your higher sensibilities, God-given higher sensibilities. You're available to that part of your knowingness. So, and so it's infinitely more important that we change the nature of how we relate to ourselves and others, so that we're more available in our brain. Brain research completely supports this. And the tests, Google just finished another test, and there's lots of research out there where they had high EQ teams versus high IQ teams, and the high EQ teams all the times win on any projects they give them, because IQ does not allow for EQ. EQ allows for the potential for higher IQ or ability to be much more creative with that and available to that part of your brain.
Let me ask you, I'm going to drill down a little bit, Jay.
Sure.
Is allowing kids to take control of their own behaviors advantageous? Some parents would cringe. I can hear the echoes of many parents talking about, that one word, discipline. My kid needs discipline. What do you have to say to them?
So discipline is an old school paradigm. It comes from an old school paradigm, discipline and punish, right? So why are you disciplining and punish? Well, the kids are acting out. Why are they acting out? They're acting out because their emotional needs and their sense of creativity and is being thwarted by what they feel and see around them, because kids come in with usually sensitive. Human beings are the most sensitive beings on the planet. We're very sensitive vibrational fields. So you come into a dynamic where there's stress in the family, things like that. Kids are not taught what they need to deal with it. So they go into coping mechanisms: fight, flight, seek approval, manipulate, control, or enable, try to fix others. Those are the 6 coping mechanisms. So parents don't know how to deal with that because they're not trained in it. So one of the historic thing is judge and discipline. And so that's not, so rather than there's skills I can teach my kids to manage themselves in a better way, and I could learn from myself to manage everything going on in a better way. For yourself at home, go to our parent emotional survival kit, see if you can find age-appropriate stuff you can use at home.
I'm an education lawyer. I'm also a parent, and I write quite frequently about bullying. So just to piggyback on my comment a little, I really want to drill down on this question, Jay.
Right.
One staggering statistic that came across my desk, and bearing in mind that long before I was focused on education, 25 years ago, I worked for a prominent Canadian criminal defense law firm, and 1 in 99 Californians lives in a prison, is incarcerated. And that number to me is staggering. It speaks to all sorts of issues, doesn't it? Recidivism and
Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what's the link? What's the link between, the blunt question really is, can social emotional learning at an early stage, based on the neuroscience and the research, prevent, even before you get to recidivism within the prison system, can it keep students out of trouble in very layman's terms?
Yeah, big time. It keeps students out of trouble. There's one school here that used to have like 1,200 incidents a year that they had to write up, look to like discipline the kid in some way or another. And they put these programs in. 2 years later, they were down to 25 incidents a year. So it's a behavioral change. Kids then are not like, it's me against you. What am I supposed to do? Coming in depressed, figuring what kind of face they're going to put on, how they're going to be, what their pose is. They will learn to relax. They're in a safe environment. Kids come up and say, "I really appreciate you." They know how to be. They know how to be positively supportive. They know how to. They learn. I've seen 10-year-olds learn how to solve conflicts that I put those 10-year-olds in the White House between themselves because they've got the skills. So it's all about all this stuff that happens. The kids get bad and they get punished. They end up in the school in the pipeline. Racism happens, you get the low, so poverty happens, racism happens, all that feeds on itself because the people who have privileges will keep it going because they feel one up. And so therefore, let's give immense taxes breaks to the rich and not put the money into really re-educating ourselves on the grassroots level. So social issues, personal socials in prisons just derive from the fact we're in this judgmental state of mind, and we don't have the skills to manage our collective responsibilities in a healthier way.
So even before we get to prison reform, we might want to start with our children, right?
Absolutely, you want to start with your children.
What do you want parents to do?
Well, what we want parents to do is, first of all, we've got a responsibility to make them know about these programs and practices. After that, we think their responsibility is to say, what do I need to do to get these programs and practices full on, not just a little piece of here, not dabbling, but really step by step. It's a series of series of trainings. It's got to be core curriculum in the schools. It's more important than math and all those things because it's more about being able to learn math. So you want to have this as core curriculum. They got to step up into schools and say, we want this as core. And I want to know I want to learn everything I can at home so I can bring these practices into my own home.
Right. And, you know, it's interesting. You have a great video on the Big EQ site, and I listened attentively as a parent. But that segues into my next question, which is, what do you want students to do? And at what levels, at what stages?
Well, I mean, what I'd like students to do who right now are, and we've kind of lag in this area, I'd like them to know about this and want to support it in their schools and speak out about it and see the advantages of it. So we've got a real major issue on educating students about this.
But the layers and nuances and subtleties of bullying go on through social media. And the kids are living in this. I mean, I'm imagining programs like Big EQ would have a massive impact on this bullying behavior, which has just become endemic.
Right. So it does have a massive impact because it takes children out of, I've got to be the one up, one down. I don't want to be one down. I got to be the one who wins this exchange. I've got to make myself feel better by making you feel worse. Therefore, I got power over. That's the sickness of the human species. It all comes from the implant we get. You watch babies, they come in and they see other babies, or in their toddler years, they just want to run over and play and love with them. And human beings are designed to be learning machines and creative machines and loving machines. But we could put them through a cookie cutter process, and that teaches them, this one's not good enough, that's not good enough, you're not good enough this way. So that becomes a program. It becomes the most reinforced program in media and politics and you name it that we exist in. It's the matrix we live in. So we've got literally billions and billions of neurons running on that through that template. Am I good enough? Is this one good enough? Am I good enough? How's it going to be this way? And our kids' minds start chattering away, trying to figure it out, rather than being their intuitive, loving self. Oh, well, my father says, so maybe I'll go this way, but maybe I'll tell a little lie this way to get this to happen, right? It's all comes from the same source, right? You know, when the spiritual side of it is when Christ and the other Buddha say, when you judge not, let you be judged. That program is like you put it in your computer, it went to all your other, went to your Word and your Excel, and it said, you're just not good enough this way. Maybe you figure out how to make yourself better. That's what it is. It's the dynamic and internalized dynamic, the program in our brains running on this, literally, that if you catch the kids early enough, you can give them a counter program. You can train them differently to have the different sense of life, and stay in that more awakened state. They come in, the idea that out of the mouths of babes. Why does that happen? Because they're still in touch with the higher knowingness that they were created to do, so they can see the disharmony and feel it. Kids freak out and go into their coping mechanisms and their emotional, crying streams, anger streams, temper tantrums, because they don't feel it's harmony and they don't feel it's safe. And it's not. It's never, because the resonant field, the energetic resonant field is not healthy. So parents could be fighting 5 rooms away. Kid can't lie in his crib, can't hear it, but the kid's going to freak out because it's picking up the vibrational frequencies. You go to the beach, there's one frequency. You go to the ghettos in Joburg, there's a very different vibrational frequency. And your inner sensitivity responds to that, and you feel disharmony. You come from the womb, it was not quite as good where you were from the spirit side, come into the womb. It's still safer than you merge into this world with its disharmonized vibrations and ways of relating. And you're starting to get cooked into the kind of ways that create pain, dysfunctionality. So, you know,
hearing you speak, you know, you bring so much passion to what you do. You really do, and it raises an interesting question, which is, you know, people are motivated by passion, but that has to come from somewhere. Is there something deeply personal in your own life that was the impetus for the Big EQ project? I mean, aside from the fact that you referenced the fact that you got married early, but what was that impetus?
Well, the impetus was very clearly, I came from a dysfunctional family. My mother was particularly damaged. She had an alcoholic father who was brutal, and she didn't have a lot of emotional relationship skills. So she fought with almost everybody. She was difficult to be with. Constant, like she was always fighting one of her sisters, this one and that one, et cetera, et cetera. And in our home, I was not allowed to really, you know, I would get the strap if I said anything back to her or showed any negative. So I had to suppress my feelings. And so I watched this, and I also saw a lot of racism when I was a kid because my father had it, and I was appalled by it. The ghetto life. My father worked in Harlem for a while. So I went there, and first cool guys I ever met were African Americans, and yet they were living in this poverty situation. And I got to know some of them and feel it out. And I was appalled by it. It just didn't make any sense. It just seems like, how can this be in this world? And so my inner drive was, when I became a journalist, was there's got to be something better out there. I got to keep myself distanced from this. I held back from my family.
Well, it sounds like you found it. It sounds like
so it's got to be something. So I was only interested in what looked like, how can we change this? And I realized very young when I did a series about drug treatment, post-Freudian methods of drug treatment. I was like 22 or something, or 21. That we have this, that there's a skill set, and so that became an interest of mine, along with social work, social justice work, and coverage and things like that.
So, I mean, Jay, you know, I'm listening to you, and at a cognitive, rational level, I know this is what we need to be, this higher enlightened self. I can see all of the impacts it could have across a person's life. But if you're not lucky enough to be in one of those schools that has your program,
right,
and you're an adult that sees the benefit of this model, how does this apply to adult learners? Is this curriculum applicable to an adult?
Amen. I mean, that's what, you know, MindSpring's about, et cetera. All the landmark MindSpring, as we know in America, a bunch of those are adult retraining sessions. People go to their therapists or now go to life coaches to get retrained. There are a number of companies that are starting to retrain their staffs and understand they need emotional intelligence. The disengagement is very high, levels of disengagement. Conflict within companies is very high, can be very high, and that means less productivity and worse work environment. So the learning, the old managerial model of top down, I got it all right, you're, you know, things that make Digby such a possible cartoon. They're not working anymore, and so smarter companies are starting to think about how do we start retraining our staffs. And there are people out there who come in and can start providing workshops for employees. So you're learning this, you know, even a basic. Every adult should take a basic nonviolent communication course just as a starter. They're out there. You got to find a local one. Get yourself retrained in nonviolent communication. So you're learning how to not create disconnect with another person, but create connection with other people. Salespeople learn it because they want to create connection with other people, but in somewhat manipulative way. But the skills are out there, and at every level. we're going to take on businesses at some point later on, but right now we're focusing on the kids. We don't have the bandwidth to do businesses yet. So when we talk to businesses, we're saying, you need this for your staff. We want you to support the kids movement. You need this for your staff, and here's some good people you can hire for your staff.
Yeah, these are important programs. What sort of external support do you have for it?
What do you mean by external support? I mean money, finance?
Yeah, government support.
So for our mission versus, I mean, government support is necessary for the school programs. That's where the big money is. Government has to say this is core to education and start. Everybody who's funding education has to fund this as a primary thing. On our level, we have board members who donate to us. We get some grants from foundations, but we're actually out this year. COVID interrupted it, but we're out this year to get business partners as business messengers. They don't necessarily have to write us a sponsorship check, but we want big businesses to start marketing this as their social branding, and see the benefits of doing so.
Just to piggyback on Tasha's question, and recognizing, Jay, that it must be challenging in the COVID environment, to raise awareness. It seems that everything but COVID, and there's some irony to that, but everything but COVID seems to be relegated to, second fiddle. Right. But the irony, of course, is that kids probably unquestionably need your learning tools
more now than ever.
More than ever, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Now during COVID, more than ever. And you do have, I noticed you have Richard Foos, who is the former CEO of Rhino Records. You have Amy Cranston flanking you and other notables involved. What do you feel that they have brought to the project?
So if I may take that in two parts.
Sure.
So COVID has created a mental health crisis in the country, right? The racism issue coming to the fore has created an opportunity for people to look at how they're relating to others, right? Social emotional learning is a great antidote to both of those. We created the parent and child emotional survival kit for use at home, curating some of the best stuff out there. That's helpful. But many of the school districts now are stepping up, especially in California, because the state education department is on it. They're stepping up the promotion of social emotional learning, because kids, they feel that we need this to help the kids on both fronts. Get out of the racial prejudice learned at home from their peers, and be able to manage their own feelings and directions and decisions much more healthily. So it's become even more crucial, and to the degree that the movement is stepping up to say that into the world, that's very helpful. On the second part, our board members, Richard, for example, our board members are primarily people who have done philanthropy work. At least the founding board members have done philanthropy work about inner city children, disadvantaged kids. Put money into it. Richard himself was chairman for years of Little Kids Rock, which put healthy music programs in 2,500 American schools, just pro bono schools, the instruments and the training. When I took him to an SEL school, I said, this is the most important thing we could ever do for kids. Took him to this one school, and we spent a few hours there. He got blown away, and he signed on to say, yeah, well, let's make this happen. So most of our board is that way. Amy is an expert, an educator, and an expert in social emotional learning. She's written her own book about it. And now she's also is the executive director of the California Social Emotional Learning Alliance, and was just on a state commission, appointed commission, to how to step up social emotional learning in California schools and in online learning to address the crisis, the emotional levels of crisis.
What would you say your biggest accomplishment is?
My biggest accomplishment? My biggest accomplishment is seeing the opportunities for expanding the possibilities of human being, whether it's one, and seeing and acting on it, whether it's through media, through the half a dozen nonprofits I've created, or through personal coaching. That's my biggest, my superpower.
Can't argue
See
with
the
that.
opportunities, and something drives me to go for it. Actually,
That's
taking on more than I should or sometimes.
I can't argue with that. That's a great answer.
Right.
Jay, I'm looking at this incredible project, and it's always useful for people listening to know that everything great starts somewhere.
Yes.
Would you be able to look back and look at the inception and very beginnings of this? Where did it start? Where are you at now? And what are you, what's the breadth of what you're hoping to achieve?
So, other than it started when I had this difficult problems with my mother. So, the first opportunity was, God literally steered me into something I would never have thought to do, which is in college, fill out an application for a job. And next thing I know, I was getting a call from a newspaper where a cousin worked, and he said, there's no jobs available. And next thing I know, I was being hired at this newspaper because I walked in this door that I would not have, I walked past it, and I got a message that said, no, turn around, go and fill it out, and I'll figure what happens. Next thing I know, I was being hired. So there's that kind of magic in my life in there. And then the next big thing that happened was I had left my newspaper and was freelancing because I had outgrown it. And I had this vision, I had more ideas than I could do, and I wanted to have my own magazine. And then a voice said inside me, the red light voice said, no, you don't know. You don't know any wealthy people to fund you. You don't know anything about publishing, et cetera, et cetera. You're a writer and a journalist, keep going at it. And it just nagged me and nagged at me. And then after a week or two, I just wrote out the idea, and then I ran into a friend at a meeting who was running a magazine. He said, well, I think that's a great idea. I think I can get my editor to support it. Maybe I'll show it to my publisher or my owner. And the owner liked it and began the path where we didn't quite do my magazine, but he hired me to run a newspaper in Los Angeles, and then got shut down quickly. And then I started the LA Weekly because I already had a great team together. So one thing flowed into another. So the turning point is like when you got a vision, say yes to it, not no to it. And
listen to that inner voice.
Take the baby steps and let the universe meet you. The whole idea about human struggle is the idea that everything's deficient. It's going to be a struggle because everybody makes it a struggle. That's the common belief. So we'll make it a struggle together, and I got to compete against you, and boom, 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 boom. And let me figure out what to do, not be guided to what I'm meant to do. And so you're actually out there pushing at the universe, and the universe, God-given universe, only wants to support what you were really created as if you allow it. So it's like, how do I just follow my guidance, my inner knowingness, whatever my guidance, and let it come to me? Because it will come to you because it's trying to get in. That's its purpose, to get you to be what you were created as, not what the cookie cutter hierarchical culture has smashed you into.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. So listen to that inner voice and let the universe do its thing.
Yes.
this idea of EQ training, I mean, we can see how powerful it is, how it can transform a person.
Right.
Do you have a vision that, and how would it work to get that same transformation at a societal level? Because we can see that link, right?
Right.
Do you have a vision for that it could
Yeah,
start transforming society?
One kid, one adult at a time. 5 kids in the classroom at a time. It's when you're in a different mindset, the outcomes are different. The universe is, the world as we know is a pure effect, 100%, 1,000% effect of how we're trained to deal with the world and what comes up for us.
What's the one question that you wished I had asked you, Jay? And what's the answer to that question?
Wow, that's a big one. Well, what does the average person listening to this do next? How's that?
That's a great, you've said, you know, I don't want to insult you by saying that you sound like a lawyer answering a question with a question. But maybe we'll couch this as it will.
Well, that's the question you're supposed to ask me.
No, well, we'll frame it as a rhetorical question. Look, you know, we've got to wrap up, but I want to thank you, Tash, for being such a gracious moderator. You know, apart and aside from the absolutely wonderful work you do with Yes South Africa, you're a real asset to your country, I have to say. And Jay Levin, I've learned a lot in you know, in half an hour. I frankly just want to shut up and listen to you because I watched your video. You know, on the Big EQ site, there was a wonderful video about training your angry dragon, and it was geared toward children. And I was captivated by this because I feel a lot of adults, I'm being very sincere when I say this, a lot of adults really could take a page out of this video in trying to understand how to better control their impulses at any age. I mean, the point of this was certainly not lost on me.
So that was a video we shot ourselves at a school called Para Los Niños in downtown LA. Almost all the kids in that care are poor. Many of them were homeless and living in shelters, etc. So when you see how they respond, you can see the real power of this kind of learning, that they're there, that they're communicating with each other, that they're exchanging information and ideas about each other and getting the point. And you can see the beautiful humanity of each of them, rather than dismiss them as a bunch of homeless kids.
Absolutely. Jay, I want to thank you again for joining us, and thank our listeners out there. Till next time.
May I answer my own last question?
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So what I would encourage people to do is check out our website. Big EQ is the name we started with. You can still get there by bigeq.org, but we're actually transforming. We're going to use the branding name for the campaign going forward. We're going to drop Big EQ. So it's equipourkids.org, equipourkids.org. So do that and follow the leads that your heart brings you to, and then start talking about this wherever you are, with parents, at your workplace. Start investigating emotional intelligence more, what it means, how you can bring it into your own life. See if there are conflict resolution trainers, nonviolent communication trainers in your area. If you want to up your own skill set and potential in life, these are really solid. These are really important trainings.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to say is for Tashmia. Tash. See this painting back here?
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's from. He's here now, but he's my South African Black friend Jabu.
Fabulous.
That's the hawk, and that's my medicine animal.
Convergence.
Yeah. Medicine, yeah. Am I?
Oh, I'm inspired, Harris. I'm inspired.
Well, so am I. Everybody go to Jay's site, bigeqcampaign.org.